Great, thank you. So thank you all for joining today. I appreciate your time and attention during this crazy time. If you haven't attended kickoff before, welcome. This is the format that we use for a lot of competitive funding solicitations on campus. My name is Faye Farmer. I direct the Research Development Office here at Arizona State University in the Office of Research called Knowledge Enterprise. My trusty cohort companion event manager is LJ Hernandez, and she will be monitoring the chat, but you can also just feel free to interrupt us. We're a small enough group that you can either chat or you can unmute and roll with it. It's going to be a fairly quick presentation because we don't know too much about this opportunity, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's so vast and the potential is huge. I also want to let you know that we're recording it. We will have some documents that are sent out afterwards in addition to the recording. And I encourage you to visit our site. Our office manages funding.asu.edu to learn a little bit more about all of the events that we stream there. They're all for funding solicitations and professional development for faculty seeking additional funding for their sponsored projects. So today, give me a minute, I have a wonderful, exciting presentation planned for you. Program review, we're going to go over what the MCA is, the solicitation review, so in detail what you're going to have to provide this year for the submission if you choose to decide to pursue it. And then my colleague Wendy Barnard will talk a little bit about evaluation, and then it's an open discussion Q&A at the end of this presentation. So again, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me or put them in the chat. But real quick, on the program review side, this is for the National Science Foundation. And this solicitation, if you haven't read through it, it's okay, but you should really read through it. You'll glean a lot more from that. Regardless of what I put here, know that the solicitation is the primary source of information that you should be referencing. So the program objective of the Mid-Career Advancement Program, MCA for short, is that they want to protect your time, create partnerships, and give you adequate resources so that faculty at mid-career points can then advance their research and training. And the premise is that this money will remove all of your distractions, maybe not all of them, but most of the distractions. It'll create synergistic and mutually beneficial partnerships outside of your home institution. Although not required, it is something that's heavily repeated in the solicitation. So I want to call attention to that. The mutually beneficial partnerships outside of the home institution will come up regularly. It will also, the idea is to give this funding announcement the teeth that it needs. The idea is that you have an existing problem that if your time is protected and some funding is provided you and you have the right connections, you will be able to gain new insights on the existing problem, identify new but related problems previously only accessible with new methodology or expertise from other fields. So that's kind of the idea here. Again, partners from outside the PI's own subdiscipline or discipline are encouraged, but not required. Now, encouraged is important here. Again, and at the end, they say it is protecting the time and resources for established scientists and engineers. So with that, who should consider applying? Well, we don't have a program analysis. Usually in our kickoffs, we tell a little bit about what's been previously awarded, why is it the direction that it's going, who the program officers are. We don't have that here. This is the first year that it's formally a program. Previous awards, when looked up, were inconsistent and kind of arose out of this plant bio background. So there's an opportunity for this year to really figure out what the program wants to do. So there's an opportunity for faculty to write a competitive proposal and tell the program officers really why this is important information and why this program is important and should fund you. It is the first year that's been broadly available. They do mention that it will go on year after year. The program does have the potential to be on par with a career, and that's mentioned a couple different ways in that the career NSF Career, if you're not familiar with it, provides funding for early career scientists to really create their research program. And that's important because mid-career, it's a whole different set of priorities. So we can see the trajectory of this program being really the next level for mid-career faculty seeking NSF awards. It launches your research. They're not looking for incremental advances for the most part. They're looking for insight and advancement. The word here that we've used is transformative. That's kind of an NIH word, but I wanted to use it here because it's really, if you had time and energy, how would you advance your discipline, your research in the next new and fantastic way? There's also an emphasis that it's your unique idea, right? So it's those ideas that don't have perhaps a programmatic home, or suddenly you're not writing to the solicitation. This program is open to any and all ideas as long as they're competitive and really argue for advancing that next step of your science and engineering. Again, just to put a finer point on it, the research isn't prescribed. Your research is what your research is, and you put it into your proposal. So some really, really unique aspects that I wanted to bring up for you guys to think about when you pursue this. So for the solicitation review, I want to bring up that there's an eligibility question. If you're an associate professor for 3 years prior to the submission deadline, you qualify for submission. If your research is applicable, previously funded by, or has the potential to be funded by these directorates, minus a few of them. For example, well, divisions, right? So if you've been funded or you have interest in these directorates, this solicitation is for you. Importantly, computer science isn't on here, right? So there is a potential that next year when they release it, they might do an addendum that includes more directorates. So I kind of wanted to broadly put it out there so that faculty members could discuss this with their program officers to see if this might be an option to a wider set of directorates going forward. For this cycle, those are the directorates that will be funded and participating here. Importantly, each directorate in the solicitation tells you which divisions are not participating. So for instance, biological sciences, Division of Environmental Biology is participating. Division of Molecular Cellular Biosciences is participating. Division of Biological Infrastructure is participating. Division of Integrative Organismal Systems is participating, but not the division that's responsible for emerging frontiers. So it's important to go through and make sure that your science, if it were funded by any of these directorates, were funded by the divisions as well. And that's just some Googling, some clicking through, just to make sure you know where you're going and where your project will be potentially reviewed. I see a chat come up. Should I pause? No, okay, we're gonna keep going.
Sorry, I was problems. Associate professor for at least 3 years or up to 3 years before submission?
You have had to be an associate professor for 3 years prior to the submission deadline in order to qualify.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I can read that directly because I'm on the solicitation right here, right? And you can Google it again. So this is a good point where if you look at who's potentially applying for this, we ran the numbers prior to this, and there's over 500 associate professors at ASU with 3 years plus in the post. If you narrow that down to research active people who are really mid-career, 3 to 10 years in the post, 180-ish. Out of that, the next cycle is about 70 associate professors who will be eligible in the next cycle, so this annual call. So if you are not eligible now, or if you feel like this is too much too soon, think about positioning yourself for next year. And this is really, it opens up the floodgates as you go further down, right? Because we start kind of narrowing, as you go through your career, you kind of narrow down in the associate professor ranks. Importantly, the double-edged sword of this is that your pool of applicants is gigantic. It's a very broad group of people who can apply to this.
And what if you're up for promotion to full right now?
They do not qualify that in any way, shape, or form. So they don't say that there's no other discussion about full, but know that if you make it through promotion, you're no longer an associate professor. So something to think about. This is targeted to associate professors mid-career. It's an excellent question, but something maybe you should bring up with the program officer too. Okay, giant pool of people. These are the people who you want to socialize your idea with. Now it's based on idea rather than, you could certainly ask if up for full, what does that mean? But they really kind of are interested in your idea and what you choose to do with it. So they are encouraging you to reach out to this group. It is a generic email inbox. So if you know any of these program officers, reach out to them, but there is a generic email that you can send your information to and ask if your idea is appropriate to this mechanism. They don't have a format for that. I also know through the grapevine that they are hosting open office hours by directorate, so you might want to keep an eye open for that. I have not been able to confirm that or see the links to open office hours to discuss this particular solicitation, but something to consider. Okay. List of proposal documents. Now this, if you choose to go after this, this is what you'll need to prepare. It's not complicated unless you think about it a long time. It's not technically really complicated. I will send the checklist with a proposed calendar for getting these things done to you. It is a 15-page project description, so it's very traditional NSF. However, the subsections within those 15 pages are very specific, and it's clearly outlined in the solicitation what should be included. Section 1, Section 2, and Section 3, and we'll go through those in a minute. Biographical sketches, there's a little hinkiness, references a little hinkiness, but I want to draw your attention to the additional supplementary documents, a letter of collaboration and a departmental letter. Those things will take extra time and consideration on your part to really draft and think about how they will make you more competitive. Current and pending, facilities and equipment, those are all kind of traditional, so we're not going to go over those too much in depth. But you'll note it's about your past, what you want to do, and what you want to do long term, section 1, 2, and 3. So for the project description, we do want you to follow NSF guidelines, and the best bet to understand PAPG guidelines is to read them yourself and really understand what they are. You can also reach out to your research administrator and they'd be able to walk you through that as well. Additional 3 sections that I want to call out, and I will in the next set of slides. So section 1 is the past research, and it can be part of that prior support section. So every NSF, for the most part, every NSF proposal does require a prior support section. They are suggesting in the solicitation you can put your prior support in that section 1. There's no guideline onto page allocation or subsection, subheader section. Next section is proposed research advancement and training. And those are the things that justify this request for funding. Like, what are you going to spend your money on? And your long-term career plans. These things that really, how are you going to translate this chunk of money in protected time? How is that going to translate into scientific discoveries long-term? So for section 1, I'm just going to go through these really quickly. You describe the past. Again, it's in the solicitation, so I'm just reposting I'm doing an NSF webinar, reposting what's in the solicitation. Describe past and current research and accomplishments. List no more than 6 publications. You want to tell them why that's important and where you got the money for them. And it is allowable to incorporate the results of prior NSF support here. If you want to keep it separate, you're certainly more than welcome to do so. Okay, so this sets the stage for how you're going to, what you've done so far. Section 2 goes through why this funding now, and this is kind of where you're going to make your money. Describe the research and training experience to be undertaken. Describe the collaboration, added value, and this is where I'm going to point back to the beginning of this presentation. In the beginning of the solicitation, they say it's not required to have outside collaboration, formal or informal. However, it's encouraged. Repeatedly in the solicitation, they give you opportunity to justify that collaboration and connection in your submission materials, which suggests to me that an external collaborator is really ideal in this case. And that's if you're going to go somewhere or work with someone or do something special, why is it important to augment what you're doing already? So that added value is kind of important to me in what I'm listening to. Describe fundamental questions and challenges in the discipline, and intellectual merit of the plans. Okay, so there are usually there's two parts of an NSF project description: intellectual merit, broader impacts, and then the other requirements and is prior support. Here's where you put your intellectual merit.
We do have a question. The
Sure.
RFP says the project description of an MCA proposal must include 3 sections in addition to the other required elements as defined in the PA-PPG. What are the other required elements specifically? The PA-PPG has everything that as a standard research grant would have.
Correct. Yes, all of those. All of the things a standard grant would have. So I'll get into some of them too. So section 2, I'm going to get to the other documents as well as we get down further. So this is section 2. Fill out why, make a really competitive case for why you're going to spend the money that you're going to spend your money on and why is it important, and your timeline for activities and products. Section 3, this is how it's going to move you to the next level. A productive long-term scientific career. Again, this is kind of the fluffy part, if I could use that term. How it's going to really accelerate what you're proposing to do. Okay. Now, I say this, and these are important. All of the sections are important, and they do not give guidance on how much weight to put in each section. My overall emphasis is that they must be as competitive as possible because your pool is so giant. And with that, I'm actually going to ask Wendy Barnard to talk a little bit about how you would measure success in your research and training plan. So as you write this project description, think about how you're going to identify the impact you're going to have. And with that, I'll let Wendy introduce herself real quick.
Hi, everyone. I am Wendy Barnard. I'm the director of CREST, which is the College Research and Evaluation Services team. And we are part of Knowledge Enterprise, which means we do not have a home academic department. So in most cases, we are considered an external evaluator. Okay, so as Faye noted, at looking through the solicitation, there are some things that are very typical that you would expect to see and some things that are not as clearly defined. One of those is evaluation. While they talk a lot about evaluation, there's nothing in there that is very specific to the amount of points given or how they will review evaluation. The one phrase that I did pull out was, does the plan incorporate a mechanism to assess success? And as Faye said, this is a really competitive process. So as you're going through and you're thinking about the different places where you might incorporate evaluation, section 2, it very clearly says, what is your training plan? That would be something that you would want to be able to say, this is what I'm doing. These are my targets. This is how I plan to evaluate them. And one of the things that NSF is always looking for, what happens if you don't meet your targets? What are the plans that you have in place to make sure that you're going back to hit those targets? In section 3, your long-term plans. That's another piece. If you have any intention of scaling this up, you definitely want to say, these are the things that I know that work. And I know that this works because I have data to support the fact that these particular partnerships or these particular training pieces or this collaboration provides evidence, and we know that that works. So typically when we're pulled into an NSF grant, we look at broader impacts, the assessment of broader impacts. So that can be anything between your outreach activities, if you do something in addition to your traditional research. Definitely the inclusion of underrepresented groups, especially if you have training, is a line item that's being funded. Workforce development, and then importantly, collaboration. So if you are thinking about having partnerships, whether it's with another university or different departments, you definitely want to figure out ways to evaluate how those partnerships are created, what types of collaboration comes from those partnerships, how are you disseminating the research, and then how do you plan to sustain that particular collaboration or work that's being done once the grant ends. So again, while evaluation is not as specifically called out in this grant, providing something definitely gives you a more competitive edge. And because we are internal to ASU, we can help draft up an evaluation plan for you free of charge as you're putting this together, with the understanding that if it's awarded, we would help with that evaluation. So even something small, something large, wherever the work that you're doing might fit in, that needs an evaluator, that needs something external, please reach out to us and we can be of service.
Great. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. Again, it's just a way to put you over the top a little bit. So when we were talking about all the other PAPG stuff, the compliance sections for every NSF is an intellectual merit section, broader impact section, and a prior support section. So I just want to call those out. They do need to be in the project description. Again, it's how you order them is up to you, but do make sure that they are in that section. Again, if the solicitation changes or FAQs come out on the program, those are the ones that you want to follow, not these. The solicitation does take priority over anything I'm saying today. On references cited, the only hinky thing is that group section 1 references separately because you brought them up into the narrative. And so there's expectation that you'll pull them out of the references cited and call them out differently. That was weird to me, but makes sense. So for biographical sketches, it's really just you. The principal investigator will put in a bio sketch. But if you happen to have a partner, which again, not required, but is encouraged, it will be outside the university, and they must too, and I'm going to, if it's listed as senior personnel, a bio sketch will automatically be required. If the partners are not listed as senior personnel because they are designated as consultants or funded through a subaward, they must be prepared in accordance with PAPG expectations for supplementary documentation. So always check with your research advancement professional to make sure what you're going to include and how you're going to budget them, because there is some wonkiness about how you can include that partner. The shell document, I'll send that after this. Shell document is just those 3 sections with the solicitation information chunked into there and just kind of color coded for you. You can use it, you can throw it away, totally up to you. Additional supplementary documents that you'll want to include, again, you want to look at the entire solicitation and think about what most benefits you competitively for this submission. There's letters of collaboration and departmental letters. In letters of collaboration, this identifies the person you will be, and it's usually singular, that you will be working with as part of your research and research advancement and training plan. It must be synergistic and mutually beneficial. You cannot be a pariah, which is kind of the opposite of those. Each partner provides a single letter. So it suggests that here you can have 1 or 2. I am not seeing that they want multiple partners, but that's up to you to decide and to really pull into. Partners can be any academic rank, but faculty appointment if at another university. However, you can have industry partners, but your mechanism changes. Again, you're going to want to think through what that research advancement plan is and who you're going to benefit from and how they're going to be included. So really the strategy around who you're trying to put in to verify or to amplify what it is you're trying to do here. A goalie isn't a big change, and I'll go over those next, but it does change. So for example, if you wanted to go work with Microsoft or somewhere like that, then it changes the mechanism. Unlike other letters of collaboration, for a PAPG, now letters of collaboration traditionally are just, yes, I will help as described in the project description, period. This content is detailed very clearly in the solicitation and requires some actual execution and typing. So think, again, it's strategy. What does the content look like? How are you positioning yourself for success? If you are going to go for a goalie, if your partner who will help you get to that next level with your protected time and resources, if they're an external and industry partner, then your title changes. I want you to check this because on a goalie, your industrial co-PI becomes part of the cover sheet, but it's kind of neither here nor there. Your research advancement person will tell you yes or no. But here it does intend that you have a section describing the interaction, the university industry interaction in your proposal. So that's added content that you need to be aware of, however long you want to talk about that interaction. And you have to, the letter is duplicative, so I think your letter of collaboration satisfies this requirement. But prior to award, you do need a university industry agreement in place. And ORSPA and all their fantastic people through ORIC can help you with that agreement. Just want to bring it up because that is a goalie requirement. Again, industry external partners might be exactly what you need to get to the next level, but it is just slightly a little more complicated putting in a proposal with them.
2 questions. Are government partners okay? And are international collaborations allowed?
I didn't see any restrictions on government, like FFRDCs, like national labs. I saw no restriction like that. I will confirm and check. International partnerships were not mentioned either. So when they talk about partnerships in this solicitation, they're talking about, in this case, it's kind of nebulous to me whether you're giving them money or not, and we'll go over the budget in a second. So you might have a letter of collaboration with somebody who's international and not seeking budget because you can't do that for international. So that might be where the line is. So again, and I'll say that a different way. If what will get you across the finish line is an international collaborator, in this mechanism for most of NSF, you cannot fund that collaboration. The majority of this solicitation is written as if you have a domestic partner that you can then fund through a subaward for some salary. So the direction of the solicitation suggests to me that it's domestic focused by virtue of the fact that they give you money for a partner, money that you can allocate to a partner. That should not be exclusionary. You should be able to do an international partnership, but note that the partnership, the budget will fund you and not that partner. Again, go through the strategy and make sure that what you're proposing with your budget is allowable by ASU standards as well as NSF. Okay, so for departmental letter, I want to bring your attention to this because it is a hefty one. It's 2 pages in length. So you do need it from your chairperson or equivalent. It is 2 pages in length. It is on letterhead, it is signed, and specific content from your department official. So it talks about who you are, what you've done in the past, what's expected of you, and it really kind of touts you. So again, to add to that competitive edge, you want to make sure you spend the time and energy on this letter as well. It's not something that's very flippant. Again, it is prescribed in the solicitation, so you want to adhere to everything that's in that solicitation. I'll just cut and paste that into a Word doc for you and send that out separately too at the end of this. Okay. Okay, so there's the budget. This is where we kind of get in the nitty gritty. Now it looks fantastic until you realize that this is distributed over 3 years. Not horrible, just really competitive program for a little bit less than I thought. And the reason that I thought that was because you can get 6.5 months salary, but it's that 6.5 months salary over 3 years. So it's distributed in weird ways. So something to think about how you're going to distribute that time over the course of the 3 years. You do get $100,000 additional direct cost. Now this is where we go back to that partner, right? It's inclusive. The only mandatory thing that they have in the solicitation is that you have to attend year 1 and year 3 2-day PI meeting to be determined post-COVID era, right? Probably DC. Because it's an early program, if you win, you'll be part of this cohort that will probably build and develop this program over time. So you'll be in cohort 1 or whatever, group 1 or whatever of this award year, and they'll want all of that information from you as you progress through this program. So that's the only prescriptive part of the budget. And then there's, you can take your partner, but only in first or last year, obviously. And then the partner can request, and I can't see, 1 month salary support as senior personnel and subaward. This goes back to the international collaboration. You likely can't suggest that. You can't budget that for an international collaborator. The point is that you can help pay for the time of the collaborator you have domestically though. You don't have to, but you have that availability in the budget. The other $100,000 direct costs is however you want to spend it. Again, strategically think through what you need to do to accomplish the goals of the research plan and training. And if that's conference attendance, if it's training, if it's figure out a technique or use a data set, that's all in that budget. Okay, I'm going to point again to how competitive this is. So you're going to estimate 35 to 45 awards this cycle. Nationally, I can't even guess how many people would qualify for this, even in the 5 bios that are participating and the 5 directorates that are participating. The actual number of awards varies across disciplinary research programs. So this suggests to me that the directorates will have some kind of that MCA coordination of program officers will have some kind of idea schema how they want to allocate funding across the directorates, and will kind of bin according to what they see and how much money they have per directorate to contribute. We've seen it before in cross-directorate programs. It makes sense to me, but I just want to, so for example, bio might have more money versus another, like engineering might have less money, right? So they'll figure out how to allocate awards based on where their directorate funds are. I'm not saying that's the case, but I have seen that in the past, and it seems reasonable here. I want you to be aware of that, because when we come back next year, we're going to look at who was awarded and why, and how the directorates fell out. Again, just restating that. Okay, it is due every first Monday in February, and so that's our next deadline, and we're done. So this one is due in February. Get cracking. And that's my presentation for today. I wanted to make sure that you had time and to discuss. I know we have a couple RAs on the line too, so I'm going to stop sharing and see if we've got anybody who wants to ask any additional questions. My office will be available to chat with you as you have questions, but again, it's a really amorphous program, so we're learning while you're learning.
I'm going to stop recording, and sometimes that spurs a few questions.